just before, we've got, as I say, a few film clips to show you, and I really want to show them to you. But Jennifer, just in a nutshell, for people who haven't seen it, what are you setting out to do in this series? Because when we spoke, you said it's about child development, not parenting. So what do you mean by that?
The series, we have 11 children we've been following since they were 1, and we cast them at the beginning from a whole range of different backgrounds and experiences so that we could get a snapshot of the idea of what does it take to give a child the best chance at life in Australia. And we look at the economic circumstances, education levels, large families, small families, urban, regional, and so we look through a filter of science. We're attached to a longitudinal study. We look through a filter of science and the observations of these 11 amazing families to try and get some sense of what is some of those answers, I guess.
And Kath, you've been part of this all along. How did they find you? Did someone ring you up and say, we're from the telly, can we invade your life for a few years?
I was actually a volunteer, excuse me, at the Vision Australia for people who are blind or vision impaired to look after their children on how, you get through little obstacles. And yeah, I happened to receive a phone call from Vision Australia as well as Jennifer, and
Never
inviting.
That last presentation was absolutely fantastic and the most remarkable visuals, but I was acutely aware all the way through, Kath, that of course you couldn't see the visuals, could you?
No.
Just how much vision do you have?
Not a great deal. In one eye I have about 5%, so it's not a great deal, but it's something.
And you have 3 children, don't you? You have
Yes.
Daniel 7, Zoe 2.5, and tell us about Jamie.
Yeah, Jamie is my first son. He was born in 2002, and at just short of 3 he had a drowning accident and got revived and had very severe brain damage as a result from his drowning, and lived for 19 months.
And yet, when we were having lunch, he is still one of your 3 children, isn't he? He's very much.
He's still my child, still my baby.
The gentleman who just spoke to us, one of his last slides was that in order to have resilience, you need adversity. What do you think about that?
I think you've got to have a lot of strengths in life. Like, a lot of things happen in life that you can't control, and you don't know how to cope, but you just try your best you can and manage through it, because that's all you can do, and try to make the best of what you can.
Well, I think it takes resilience to let this woman with her film crew into your life.
Or madness.
Jennifer, part of it is the Life Lab, and I want to show you a clip in just a moment from the Life Lab, but just in a nutshell, what is the Life Lab in the series?
The Life Lab's our opportunity to get the children together. So once every program, so once every 2 years, we get the 11 kids together, and at least when they were little, they had no idea we were filming, so we went to great lengths to kind of hide the cameras and the cameraman, who they knew by that stage quite well, so we hid them behind the back and we put them in these little rooms, and it's to observe their social interactivity, to observe their temperament, to observe a whole range of things, their self-regulation, and it changes as they get older, of course. So that's the Life Lab, and it's become more and more extravagant as we've gone on.
Well, essentially this session is about, what do you need to do to give a child the best chance in life, and we're going to go to the Life Lab now to an exercise that's about painting. So what are you exploring in this test that we're about to see?
We're looking at whether how the kids, because life throws up all sorts of things in your way, this is one of these tests to see what will happen with our 7-year-olds when things don't quite go according to plan.
And I'll tell you later who I identify with. Could we see the first clip, please?
We're going to do a painting of these flowers over here. Flowers?
Setbacks in life are inevitable, so we wanted to test how our kids deal with an unexpected challenge in the Life Lab.
I'm not good at painting flowers. I'm really good.
Helena is quite particular about getting her lines just as she wants them. Carefully measures to make sure her second line is at the same height as the first.
Why don't you guys come and have a closer look at the flowers?
I can see it.
Come over here and look at this. Come.
When their backs were turned, we sabotaged our kids' paintings with the help of a mischievous accomplice.
So the painting experiment is telling us about their temperament. their ways of dealing with frustration, how perfectionist they are, how much can they cope when their initial plan doesn't work out.
2, 3. All right, go back and keep going with
Who did that?
Somebody done that to mine!
What happened?
That is so rude.
Who did that? It definitely wasn't me.
So Halima, once her picture was spoiled, seemed to be quite discouraged. It took her quite some time to get the strength together to start again on a new picture.
What should we do? What do you want to do?
Daniel quickly decides to move on.
What did you want to do, Daniel?
Another page.
Oh, do you think that would be a good idea?
Who did that?
So can we do different stuff?
Do the flowers again.
Anyway.
And finally, so does Halima, starting a new painting just as perfect as the last.
I did nothing to hers.
I know. And I'm going to do something a person.
We have very limited time, and I want to show you 2 more excerpts. I'm not going to explore it at depth, but I gather from all the oohs and ahs in the room, I'm not the only one who identified a little bit with the little girl. But Jennifer, can I just ask you, this was one of a number of things that you did to explore temperament and adaptability and the capacity to sort of bounce back and cope with things. But you found that there were patterns according to whether people were boys or girls. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, that painting experiment, I mean, one of the lovely things is that we have a lot of expert involvement in the research for the series. So we go in with particular ideas about what we're testing, but sometimes there's surprising things that come up as well. So with the painting experiment, what we didn't expect, and nor did the experts in fact anticipate, was that the boys and the girls responded totally differently. So in the examples you've seen there, Daniel, like most of the boys, actually just got on with it. They saw the blue and they thought, well, what the hell, there's another page, away I go. Or they thought, hey, the blue looks good, you know, I'll adapt a little bit more blue in the painting. With the girls, all of them, and there's 6 girls and 5 boys, all of the girls were very, very distressed at the ideas that the rules weren't being followed. And so they just kept on about who was it, who did it, what, you know, why. It was unbelievable. So gender at play at the age of 7.
I'll only say, ouch. Let's have a look at another excerpt from Life at 7, which will be on ABC TV later this year. And we now go into Kath's life. So let's see the second film, please.
My name is Daniel. I have 4 best friends.
My favourite thing about Daniel is his personality with being loud and happy-go-lucky. He's cheeky, loving and caring.
For most of us, this may seem an extreme measure to teach a child to swim. But for Daniel's mother, Kath, there is no choice, having lost her eldest son at the age of 4 in a drowning accident. She's determined that it should never happen again.
It was undescribable losing a child. Money can't buy life and health. And if you can just do that one little bit to, you know, have your children survive and swimming, it's something, you know, it feels like Jamie's death isn't in vain.
Chloe, finish.
All right, Daniel's turn now.
Despite Daniel's easygoing temperament, the environment in which he's grown up has been more traumatic than that of most kids his age. His parents' relationship didn't survive the trauma of losing a child, and despite Kath being pregnant with their 3rd child, they went their separate ways.
What's that? What do you think? Look at a girl.
Yes!
Yes.
I don't have a girlfriend.
We left Daniel in life at 5 with his mum newly single and a new baby sister. Kath, who is virtually blind, started life as a single mum.
Who's that? Who's that? What's her name? Zoe.
Daniel is now the man of the house and helps take care of his mum, whose sight is diminishing further,
Very slowly.
and 2-year-old baby sister Zoe.
Here we go, Zoe.
It's a huge responsibility for this little boy.
What have you learnt from being part of this? Because it must cause you to reflect very intensely on your parenting, because you've got these people staring at you.
I always hope I'm doing the right thing, but just to know that, you're human. You sometimes, don't always do what you think's best, but, you get there in the end that hopefully your children are happy and, caring and grow up to learn to manage themselves in life and manage, difficult problems in life that sometimes, you get dealt with, and just to know how to manage.
We were talking over lunch, and you said that it's not uncommon for someone to say you shouldn't have had children because you're nearly blind. Well, can you explain how you respond to that? How do you answer that?
First off, you feel frustrated thinking, well, why I'm human like you? Everybody else is, human. We just have someone with disabilities have just something different about themselves, and, no one's perfect. And you think, well, don't be so judgmental, because I can do a good job and I am good at being a mum, and, you do your best like anybody else, and, everyone makes mistakes, but you keep going, and I don't see it as a problem with having very minimal sight. I just manage to do what I can do and get on with the job.
Yes, can I say that there's part of the Life at 7 program, we did some vox pops with the parents, and one of the questions was, what are all the challenges of parenting? It's obviously there's a lot of challenges, and all the other parents said, oh, there's this, and they whinge, and they're difficult to manage, and they're always asking, and Kath said, actually, it's not that hard. It was the most extraordinary response. We said, yes, it must be hard,
Do you think Daniel has gained things from having a mum who needs more support?
I think it's opened his eyes a lot of that, sometimes people can be a little bit different, but that's okay. That it hopefully gives him a tiny little bit more responsibility of not being a parent, but having that you need to consider somebody else's needs, and if someone needs a helping hand with something, that he's be able to, and he's a very caring, considerate child, and especially with his brother being so sick as well at the time, and just getting in and he's actually doing it. It's second nature for him to be able to be respectful.
Even in that bit of film where Zoe was learning to swim, and that stress of seeing a little child with the water going over her face, he sort of jumped up and was a tiny bit agitated at the side of the pool. You could see his empathy, in action. I want to show you one more glimpse, and we're going to meet a new person in the Life Lab. I love this Life Lab, and I'm hoping to go there shortly and learn things about myself. Just in it, very, very quickly, what is the question or theme being explored in this final excerpt?
In the final excerpt, this is the raffle ticket experiment, and we put the kids in there to basically observe them in terms of social interaction and persistence at a task. It's one of those impossible tasks. Millions of bits of paper, they're supposed to colour code them and put them into boxes. So it's kind of, it's going to be chaos. So you put them in there and see how they might interact, and
it's
can
the
they
way
stick at a
psychologists think. They're going to engage in a cruel behaviour with children, and we're going to watch them through a one-way mirror. Let's have a look.
Jarana is the youngest of 6 kids in a high-achieving family in country New South Wales.
So you've been cleaning your teeth every day? No. Wrong answer.
In the 7 years that we've been filming him, we're never quite sure what to expect. And today, Jarana remains as elusive as ever. So in a group of kids who are relative strangers, what role would he take?
Okay, guys, I'm going to start the timer. Ah!
We're gonna win in this one. Yes, do this. Stay on the ground. No! What are you doing? What are you doing? No, they're all in the...
Something unexpected happened. Not only did he talk, but he quickly emerged as the leader of the group.
Come over here. What is wrong with you? What are you messing it up for?
Jarana's the only kid out of all of the participants who took a leadership role.
They're not in the right order. Hey, what's this? Stop doing it.
And he's marshalling the other kids, encouraging them, and in some cases even reprimanding them when they're doing it wrong. What we see is he's really task-oriented. He's viewed this as some collective goal. So he's trying to make sure that everyone's doing it right, and he's the only kid doing that.
Good job.
I was messing around.
Oh dear.
Go.
Who is the most fun to play with?
Jarana.
Whatever the leadership qualities are,
Jarana.
and wherever they come from,
Jarana.
it's clear from our Life Lab experiment
Jarana.
that his peers respect him.
Jarana.
Who's the most adventurous? Who is
Jarana.
the funniest kid?
Jarana.
The coolest kid?
Jarana. Jarana.
Obviously, there's so much I could ask you, but the thing I want to comment on is that Jarana is Aboriginal, and in that last segment, he's chosen again and again and again by his peers in a positive way, and you desperately hope that's still happening when Jarana's 20.
Yeah, well, I suspect it will. And Jarana's story is absolutely intriguing because he was a very easygoing one-year-old, but by the time we came to life at 3 and 5, he had become painfully shy, anxious. He couldn't leave his mother. He refused to be part of anything that someone else wanted him to do. And as we said, really, we'd go up to the house, we'd travel up to northern New South Wales to film. You never knew whether he would actually agree to be filmed or not. It was very, very tricky. And we wondered whether it was partly a cultural thing or what it was, but his mother quietly said, I think he'll come through. And in a way, I think, so when he came to life at 7 in the Life Lab, we couldn't get him out of it, the Life Lab. And he had come into his own in the most extraordinary way. And I think one of the things is, and this is maybe one of those lovely tips for parents, is that sometimes kids are very different with their own peers than they are with adults. He's still not convinced about adults, but by God, he's good with kids and his own peers. And he's really just very, very comfortable.
I guess, inevitably, I'm curious to know, is the fact that his mother quietly said, I think he'll get through, the critical piece of information? Like, Jennifer didn't want me to ask her analytical result questions because she's a television producer and she's got a whole lot of you to conduct experiments and then comment rather than she considers herself not an expert, but could we give her permission just to give us a few of her observations? Okay, thank you. Because I'm interested in what you've learnt about what gives a child the best chance in life. And one of the things you told me was it's not just about parenting. What did you mean?
Well, I think in Jarana's case, one of the things that I would say is that his story is really strongly one about expectations. And the Indigenous story, as we know, across education is not particularly a happy one. It's not the one we'd like it to be. But in their family in particular, they have high expectations of their children and in a very, very positive way. And the leadership thing, as we discovered in Life at 5, there is in fact, in Jarana's, his great-grandfather was a very big Indigenous leader, and that was only kind of revealed to us on the last program. So there are role models, and he has older siblings who are at university, at select dance schools. I mean, it's a very, very exciting story. And
role models is another key message you've got out of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
In a nutshell, what would you say about role models in the importance for children?
It's the number one learning experience for young children, and whether that's in how the parents relate to one another on an emotional level, how they resolve conflict. One of the things that comes out in Life at 7, which is intriguing, I thought was intriguing research, is that children see, I think on average, something like 7 conflicts with their parents per day. More, that's according to the mothers, less according to the fathers, interestingly. But the important thing is is, as long as they're not kind of obviously extreme cases, the most important thing is that the children see that be resolved in front of them. Because the real issue is when there are issues and then they go quietly off, as they did in the 1950s and 60s, presumably to the bedroom quietly to resolve things or yell at each other. It has to be resolved in front of the children, and that's a really key piece of information.
Kath, how is it going with your ex-husband? Because we've just been told how you resolve conflict is important, and that unfolds before all our eyes when we watch this series.
It does. We've had a few issues on and off, which I suppose any ex-partners sort of do. I'm trying my very, very best on my side, also having Daniel at home with me mostly. But obviously there is issues that we are having, but we're trying to do the very best we can to try and make it stable for Daniel and or Zoe. But it's a work in progress, but yeah.
And do you have a role model for how to be a mother?
My parents, my mum, fantastically. She's, very strong-willed and, very caring and considerate, and have always been supportive no matter what we've chosen to do, but yeah.
And we see her, I know, in one of the series, again, perhaps the source of your quiet confidence. Our time is almost up, but I just want to ask you one more quick thing, Jennifer. You also told me it's not about money, and that's interesting because your program does take us into the lives of working class people, and you really get to know people in a very intimate way. Why do you say it's not about money? Because people say poverty's bad for kids.
Look, I think that, there's two great stories, but I've obviously only got time for one. In Life at 7, one of the things that we do is we ask the kids what their main values are. And so, in fact, we said, what are their least important values? And they have to choose from things like money, fame, money, fame, kindness, health, a whole range of things. And what was completely delightful in one of our families, which is the family with the most money and the most opportunity and all the rest of it, but the one whose father has been very sick with cancer on and off, rich was her least important value, the child of that family, and her most important value was health. So I just thought, from a child's point of view, there was something very, very strong and powerful there. And our other story, quickly then, Shine, who is the child of... Her mother was basically a 16-year-old drug addict on the streets, got pregnant, ended up having her first child, 4 children to a very abusive partner, ended up with this beautiful man called Alan. They had Shine together, and then they got themselves out of the poverty trap over a period of years. And in Life at 7, okay, I'll give it away, they both graduate, the parents. And in terms of what that means for Shine to dream, I thought I'd get through the whole session without that.
Normally they want us to cry on camera, and she is crying behind the camera.
Oh, that's right, on your behalf.
It's fantastic, though, but you really care about these people.
I do.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please thank Kath and Jennifer.